Okay, part 6 of the Sleep Good series. This week we're going to talk about some more of the negative effects on your body from, lack of sleep and what it kind of does to you. So let's get into it. First off, if you have prolonged lack of sleep, what ends up happening is your body's sympathetic nervous system, which we've talked about in a previous video. I can't remember which one. I think it might have been part maybe 4 or 5, who knows. But one of them, right? Essentially, it has partial control over your fight or flight response. And what happens is, with extended long periods of, sleep deprivation where you're not getting the, 7 to 8 hours, your sympathetic nervous system picks up. And when you're asleep, what happens is you actually will have a higher heart rate. And what that kind of does is it increases the amount of and the volume of blood kind of flowing through your body, which in turn increases your blood pressure. It's kind of a flow-on effect. So you have the higher heart rate, which means you've got a higher blood pressure, which then translates to you'll have issues with your veins and arteries where there'll kind of be like chunks of it kind of ripped out as the high blood pressure kind of creates these cracks in your blood flow system. And what can happen from there is, left untreated, what those cracks will do is they'll calcify, which can then lead to, blockages and stuff like that. And that's where you can get blood clots and all that nasty stuff like strokes. But the double-edged sword, well, not the double-edged sword, but the double whammy, I guess, on this front is you have something which is known as natural growth hormone. And what that is meant to do is, when those cracks in the vein and arteries, or whatever you want to call them, appear, that's supposed to go in there and kind of heal them and fix them and kind of pave them over. But what happens is, when you have reduced amounts of sleep, you actually release less natural growth hormone during your sleep. And what that does is, it doesn't give your body the opportunity to kind of repair the damage from that, higher blood pressure, higher heart rate. And, as you can see, as you can probably imagine, it kind of has this double effect where you're causing more damage and your body doesn't have the opportunity to repair itself, which, as we've talked about many times, is almost kind of really a huge component of what sleep's about, is giving your body an opportunity to repair itself. So without that, you're kind of doing yourself really irreparable damage that can lead to all sort of cardiovascular related diseases and illnesses, which is not something you really want. And seeing how cardiovascular illnesses are one of the biggest killers of people in the developed world, it just makes you wonder and think how much of that might be related to really poor sleep schedules, over a lifetime, and how that kind of plays in effect with other factors. But moving on to the next, issue or problem that arises from lack of sleep, which is to do with type 2 diabetes. So what a lack of sleep can also does is it reduces your body's cells, capacity to absorb sugar, or what it's called, what it's known as glucose. And what that can make you is hyperglycemic, which means there's far too much sugar or glucose in your body. And over a long extended period of time, what that can lead to is you developing type 2 diabetes, which is a irreversible disease that, once you kind of get it, you've got it for life. And if you've seen some of the horror stories and things that can come from that, it can involve, essentially amputations of, limbs and body parts, alongside other kind of, numerous negative health effects, which, is not something you want. So definitely it's something that you need to be thinking about if you're kind of cautious about that, or your family's got a history of that, of type 2 diabetes. It's definitely something you definitely want to keep under control. So you definitely want to be getting a sufficient amount of sleep, as opposed to kind of running down to the midnight oil too much, where you might be running the risk, or you will be running the risk of developing that kind of really bad disease. Now, that's a bit of a short one, and I think we can all kind of understand why that one is, bad and not something you want. The next one has to do with food and kind of appetite and its relationship with getting sleep. what happens is you have kind of two main chemicals or molecules in your body which kind of tell your brain whether or not you're kind of full or satisfied. So one is leptin, which is let me just quickly consult my notes. Oh God, isn't this embarrassing? Yeah, so leptin is the fullness hormone. So what it does is it dulls that. So it makes the effects of leptin less pronounced. So what leptin does is it tells the brain that your body's full and you don't need any more food. So if you're not getting enough sleep, it will reduce the amount or the effectiveness of leptin in your body, meaning your body or the chemicals in your body will be telling the brain that it wants more food than it necessarily normally would. And on top of that, the other chemical, which is called ghrelin or ghrelin, GHRELIN, which is kind of like God, what is it? Oh, I can't believe I'm blanking on these. It's the hunger hormone. God, no wonder why. So that tells your body when you're hungry, right? And what it does is it makes, with lack of sleep, it actually makes that more prominent and more pronounced. So the effects of that molecule become, amplified, meaning you put those two together, your body's telling you that you're hungry more than you are, and your body's ability to tell, to put the brakes and say, hey, wait a second, the body's actually full, have kind of been cut. So what ends up happening is you're going to overeat, which in turn relates to, you putting on weight, which, already has, all sorts of negative health effects, which, and plus just generally, physical effects. Like no one wants to, look fat or, no one likes the idea of putting on weight. It's not something many people, would consider a good thing. And, I think that kind of speaks for itself, really. Then, oh God, so I know I'm kind of spitfiring through a lot of these, but it's just if I don't do it, we'll be here for hours just talking about these things. So it's better to just kind of go through them all. The other part of that is you might think exercising might kind of fix that, which it kind of does, but even when you do control for your level of exercise, these effects and these of these chemicals still kind of are really prominent, and it will push you more towards sugary and kind of complex carbohydrates like pasta and pizza and stuff like that, which kind of are really, which are good in there. They're not necessarily bad, but in really small doses. But when it's pushing you towards a whole meal of the stuff, that's when it's not good for you and gonna have negative health effects. Now the other kind of appetite related thing to do with health is with the health of sleep is these things called endocannabinoids, which essentially are the same system that when you smoke weed makes you more hungry and makes you want to eat more. Same thing kind of takes hold. These same kind of things, these endocannabinoids, are also in effect when you're getting reduced amounts of sleep, which will kind of again prompt you to reach for eating more food when you normally if you had slept a full 8 hours, you wouldn't actually be as hungry or want to actually even have that extra food because your body is already kind of okay and its energy reserves are fine, so it's not needing the crunch of extra food. Now you might think that staying up all night or staying awake burns more calories than sleeping, which is kind of true. Staying up does burn more calories than necessarily sleeping, but the thing is it's only very marginal, only by 100 or so calories when you're thinking about what the lack of sleep will do to you when it comes to your choices around food and prompt you more to go to overeating and typically eating less healthier foods. It's not the gain you make by staying up all night or staying awake for extended periods of time isn't worth it in comparison to getting enough sleep. Now let me just check my notes to make sure I've covered up all the last ones. Oh yeah, God, here's the last really bad one, especially if you're someone who likes to work out and is a real gym junkie. short sleep and weight loss so if you have short sleep and you're burning calories and stuff like that, it's going to burn more muscle than fat. Whereas if you were fully rested, your body will tend to burn fat instead of muscle. So yeah, you definitely don't want to go down that path when it comes to your kind of bodybuilding exercise and ambitions, because, well, unfortunately all your hard work and gains will be burnt away when you're losing that weight and stuff like that, because it will be burning your muscle. So definitely not something you want to be doing. I think the next one we're going on to just a more general thing about sleep. I think we've kind of covered a lot of the negative effects. Once again, there is stuff I haven't covered, and it would be worthwhile if you went out and bought the book and read it yourself, because I think there's still there's so much in there that I can't cover within just these videos that would be worthwhile for you to know. And I've tried to get the straight up essentials, but there definitely is more detail that I think a lot of people would like to know, but I can't dedicate enough time to it. So I think it's just better to just read the book. But we'll move on to a more general thing about sleeping and dreaming, and kind of what dreaming is all about. Because when we talked about the positive effects of sleep, we tended to be really focusing on NREM sleep, which doesn't have anything to do with dreaming. But we will now be talking about in the next video kind of REM sleep, which is more, like I said, centered around dreaming and the positive impacts of what dreaming has, and when they're trying to crack the code, and these scientists are trying to uncover the code of what's the purpose of dreaming, and why do we do that, when you think of all why, what was the evolutionary purpose for developing dreams. So yeah, I'll see you next, well actually I'll see you tomorrow, because unfortunately I forgot to do a video last week because I was so caught up with the things I was doing for the Australian federal elections, so I didn't even get time to record a video. So that's why I'll be doing 2 of them this week, so get excited.